architectural education is being taught in the same way like it was taught 50 years ago, 70 years ago, and we are still teaching the same way. So that minimum standard, that is minimum. Who has stopped you from doing maximum? Everyone knows, but no one does it. What you're saying is absolutely right. Profession should needs to change. हम क्यों नहीं एडवर्टाइज करना चाहिए हमने? जब एडवर्टाइजिंग का दवा खावे का जमाना है पूरा. Everything is show, everything is publicity, everything is your presence on the media, and that's how you get projects. Social media, which matters these days for the younger
It's
generation.
not about only social media also. Advertisements भी क्यों नहीं कर सकते? मतलब physical advertisements, flyers हैं. I am not saying कि hoardings लगा दो.
क्यों नहीं लगाओ? अगर जब फ्लायर बेच सकते हो तो होर्डिंग नहीं लगा सकते? आपको अल्कोहल का, लिकर का एडवर्टाइजमेंट नहीं कर सकते? Morally, it's not allowed. Legally, it's not allowed in our country. But
See,
क्या है?
that's not
जो भी
legal, right?
लिकर के ब्रांड है, बड़े-बड़े ब्रांड है, पानी बेच रहे हैं लिकर की बोतल में सेम ब्रांड के नाम पे.
COA provides the license to architects. In what cases can they revoke the license?
Professionals, we receive n numbers of complaints against architects. Architects against architects, engineers against architects, clients, municipal corporations, and so many people. So the president should also be elected directly by the architects, registered architects, and few council members should also be elected directly by the profession.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Inside Converse. I am architect Soumya Bansal, co-founder of Inside. Today I have a very special guest with me. I have Mr. Habib Khan. He is currently the principal at SHK Architects Nagpur. He is also working as the chairperson at SPAD, and he has been the former president of COE. Today we'll talk about academia to him, a few points about Council of Architecture, how can we integrate the profession more with council. So, hi, Mr. Habib, a very warm welcome. Yes, how are you?
Good evening. Good evening, Soumya.
So, let's talk about academia a little bit since you have recently taken the chair at. So, in that reference, we understand that there is an existing gap between academia and practice, and it's not a secret anymore. It negatively affects both practitioners and students alike. Students at times do not receive proper training, and firms don't have access to the right talent. At the end, students are the ones who are suffering. So, how can we extend academia and industry collaborations beyond just calling in practicing faculties?
First of all, I've been director of two architectural institutes apart from SPA Delhi, where I'm the chairman. One is PIADS in Nagpur and LTIDS in Bombay. So I've been involved with academia since a long time, almost 30 years, along with the practice. The gap exists specifically in our profession only. If you see the medical profession, if you see chartered accountants, there is no gap which exists because the practice and the academia are very strongly interlinked with each other. You cannot have a medical college without a medical hospital.
Yeah.
And since we are governed, our institutions governed by UGC, Council, ICT, and other academic bodies, and the probable misuse by the faculty to do professional practice, it was banned that, a teacher cannot be a practicing architect and so on. So it is illegal for private practice. But they can do institutional consultancy. So like you said, apart from teachers practicing architecture, that's a very vitally important aspect and a component of architecture learning, where the person who teaches is also practicing as a professional. And that person also knows the ins and outs of the profession. So you will find that a visiting teacher gets more respect, commands more respect than a normal teacher because he or she comes from the field. They are more wiser in terms of how the market goes, what is the latest trend that is happening. Not that teachers are not, but there's definitely a gap. Now, which needs to be bridged. Is at one end of the triangle is the academia, the teachers, the other, and the third are the students themselves. So this is a triangle that gets formed, and we need a complete commitment, involvement, and interest in developing each other. The profession or the professionals should understand that they have a responsibility to train the future generation because they are their resource initially. And then students will become co-professionals in time to come. And to improve the quality of practice and the output of the built environment, the professionals should also have a responsibility in training these students. Apart from teachers practicing architecture or teachers being practicing architects, teachers need to also not shirk the responsibility. Like we have practical training, 6 months of practical training now. So
Hmm.
now this 6 months of practical training is where the students gets enlightened as to what is happening in the market, what is happening in architectural offices and all. But the teachers should be updated themselves, and there has to be an initiative. Like in over a period of last couple of decades, what has happened is visiting faculty involvement in colleges is becoming less and less
Hmm.
because the faculty feels insecure when a visiting faculty comes in, because the kind of respect, interest, and involvement that happens through a visiting faculty who is a practicing architect or a practicing professional, the students are more attracted to that person. I mean, it's
Yeah,
a normal thing that has happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even I have experienced that when I was studying
Yeah.
art. So,
Yeah. So that
but
happened. So the teachers feel insecure. So they don't want to involve, you know, professionals of high repute or high standing or experience, who are more experienced than the existing faculty. They don't
Hmm.
want to involve them so that, the insecurity aspect takes over. So as a vicious circle. And from the students' end, the students also need to understand the level of commitment. They're in a profession, not in a business. Training of a professional is twofold. One is the academia and the institution, the other is in the field.
Hmm.
You know, either this happens simultaneously or this happens post or pre.
Hmm.
So students today, I'm sorry to say so, but they are not as committed, as dedicated, and they want easier and faster returns, financial returns as well. And so that is a problem when it comes to a profession. Professional training needs patience. It's a very difficult question to answer in an event like this, and it's a collective responsibility of all the three. Unless that happens, nothing. Now we are working three independently. There's a strong
Hmm.
disconnect between the faculty, the teachers, and the students because of the generational change. Teachers are all seniors like us, and we are not in sync with the aspirations of the new generation. The new generation has certain aspirations from the teachers, which teachers are
Yeah.
not able to meet. I'm just giving you a average understanding of what the situation is currently. And professionals are least interested. They're saying, कॉलेज आप अपना काम नहीं कर रहे हो, आप पढ़ा नहीं रहे हो ठीक से, कैसे आप कैसा आउटपुट निकाल के भेज रहे हो मार्केट में. So it's a vicious circle. So unless we all collectively come together, ये नहीं होगा.
Yeah. Actually, it has become kind of a blame game now,
Yeah,
right? You touched upon a very interesting point where you said key medical colleges cannot exist if they don't have a certain amount of like
you cannot start a medical college without a
yeah.
300 bed hospital.
Yes, exactly. So this ties up to the, industry and academia collaboration a lot.
Right.
Why do we see such a gap in architecture? Is it because that the firms are really small and the industry is too fragmented?
So it's a individually oriented. See, medical college in an institution.
Hmm.
एक डॉक्टर मेडिकल कॉलेज नहीं खोल सकता है ना. You cannot run a 300 bed hospital. It has to be either a government or a sanstha or a trust or a charitable organization or some institution like that, a corporate structured institution. आर्किटेक्चर प्रैक्टिस तो कोई भी कर सकता है, सिंगल हैंडेडली भी बंदा कर सकता है. जो करते हैं मतलब मैक्सिमम ऑफ द आर्किटेक्ट्स आर सिंगल हैंडेड. The financial nature of an architectural practice is not as empowered as any other professional. So
Hmm.
that is a major issue out here.
Hmm. And okay, in other industries, there are big companies, right, who come and establish their labs in within the colleges, and there is a concept of student ambassadors and faculty partners in with the companies itself, right? So there is a lot of research happening. I know of Innovation Cell at SPA when I was a student there, but other than that, I have not seen any other college having any other kind of industry connection. So why do we see
No,
that?
that's not correct. I mean, I wouldn't say that's a 100% correct statement. There are a lot of colleges which are having industry interaction. There are a lot of labs which are set up. It depends on the initiative of the institute or the faculty which is there in the institute to go out and reach out to the industry. Industry is always willing to come and help.
Hmm.
Maybe, the volume of money that is being pumped in may be less. I mean, if you see SEP for that matter, or some institutions in Bangalore or Many other cities. I've seen so many institutions.
But they're still the top-notch ones.
It depends. Why have they become top notch?
Yeah, that's also right.
I mean, why have they become? I mean, it's not because SPA Delhi gets funding from the government or, based in Delhi. It's not like that. It's the initiative of the faculty or the administration which have reached out. Why does SEP is a private institution? So why have they established so many good labs and having an industry interaction? There's so many other institutes also, private institutes also doing this job.
Mm.
So we cannot have a blanket statement saying here, हमारी industry, the academia is not taking the initiative, to be sorry to say that, but they are not taking enough initiatives to reach out to the industry, to talk through some practicing architecture or through some other agency. They are not taking the initiative to do this. That's the problem. I don't think so. Industry is shying away from, establishing.
Is this something that has to do with the format of education that COA has prescribed to the institution, like the minimum standards that COA has prescribed? Because I have been in talks with some colleges and they said that we have a prescription from COA and we exactly follow that.
Hold on.
That's नहीं कि वो minimum है.
Huh. See, I'll tell you one. Without undermining the fact that architectural education is being taught in the same way like it was taught 50 years ago, 70 years ago, and we are still teaching the same way.
Yeah.
Same method, same pedagogy.
Also, yeah.
While the profession has changed drastically, it has gone way far ahead of what the academia is. We have not transformed ourselves and we have not kept ourselves in sync or in the speed which the profession is transforming. Not even the council, for that matter, for their rules, regulations, acts, or whatever. 1972 में act बना है. I mean, now we're in 2024.
Yeah.
How can the profession remain stagnant for 52 years? If it remains stagnant, it'll die. So profession has transformed itself by the market forces.
Yeah.
But academia and its regulation has not. So there will always be this dealing that will happen. And of course, without undermining the fact that we have not transformed our education system, we have to understand minimum standards, you said, right? So that minimum standard, that is minimum. Who has stopped you from doing maximum? Everyone knows, but no one does it.
Yeah.
That is the pitfall of regulation. That's a pitfall of an act, of a law. इसमें पैसे कमा रहे हैं, profit भी हो रहा है, हम plus में चल रहे हैं, whatever. अब minimum है तो minimum. Desire to go a step ahead of the minimum standards is what is needed from the institutions. If they do it, then you see how quality of architectural education will improve and change. Minimum पे अटक गए हो आज यार, minimum provide नहीं कर पा रहे हो ठीक से.
I'm just curious to know कि ये जो these standards that are given by COA, ये तो internal thing है, right? अगर if we have to change this, या जैसे हम बोल रहे हैं minimum से थोड़ा उसमें 2-3 चीजें अगर हम और add करके दे दें and that becomes the minimum standards, उसमें मतलब like is it too much effort? I really want to know.
See, it depends. When I took over as president, we took out these revised minimum standards in 2020. It was after 38 years के बाद में minimum standards change हुए हैं. And minimum standards जो है उसको बदलने के लिए there's a certain process which is not very tedious. I mean, it needs the support of the ministry.
अगर government के पास जाना है, that's a tedious process.
You have to go to the government. Ministry gives us the mandate to take out it.
Okay.
So it has to go to the ministry, but it doesn't have to go to the parliament to amend.
Oh.
Only the ministry at their level can do it. Yeah.
Right.
Parliament जाने के लिए act में अगर amendment है. The act is one structure. So the minimum standards fall under regulations. So regulation को करने के लिए आपको जाना नहीं पड़ता. Ministry के through हो जाता है. Ministry takes up a government resolution, उसके हिसाब से हो जाता है. But the idea is, like you're saying, कुछ और add कर दो उसमें, और फिर से revise कर दो minimum standards. अभी जो minimum standards भी follow नहीं कर पा रहे हैं लोग. They are still unable to meet the minimum requirements.
Okay, so building upon my previous question, like how can we extend the academia and industry collaborations? Lack of college placements is also an issue in this industry, right? And it's also a common reason students leave architecture because there is no placement cell as such in many colleges and it's not a mainstream thing. Can we imagine a world wherein architecture graduates can receive college placements and that's a mainstream thing and it's not some colleges that do? I know for a fact that SPA does that, but can it become a mainstream thing?
If that happens, architectural education would be dead.
Okay, and why do you say that?
How many times have you gone to a MBBS doctor and your head was aching, or you had to check your eyes, or your stomach was aching, or your neck hurt, or your throat was a problem?
Many times.
Only to MBBS doctor, a general physician.
I
If you
mean,
have to check your eyes and you have
yeah.
to put your specs, do you
Hmm.
go to a general physician?
No, I would go to an
Or
ad.
you go to eye doctor who is a ophthalmologist,
Yeah.
right? If you are having a broken arm, you will go
Hmm.
to an ortho,
Yeah.
right? So that system of a general physician
Hmm.
feeding to specialists is gone.
But
Right?
they do have to
There
do.
used to be how many doctors these days do not specialize? How many of them? The percentage is minuscule
Okay.
because the medical profession has become specialized, specific, skill oriented. And
Hmm.
same thing is happening in architecture. Gone are those days when only a BR was practicing, only an architectural graduate was practicing. Unless we do specialization today, your profession would be dead and you will not survive. Unless you have dire financial needs, which you need to repay a loan or, or you're unable to continue education, you should seek placements. Otherwise, you should not seek placements. You should go for specialization. You
Okay.
complete your post graduation and then seek for placements. आज की
But
तारीख में आप
but
देख लो even
independently,
government tenders,
huh?
government sector also will demand a post graduation qualification. There will be certain marks allotted for post graduation qualification, for technical qualification. For teaching, also
Hmm.
you need postgraduate qualification. NITs and IITs without a PhD, आप सिर्फ BR से
Understand.
क्या कर लो?
No, I understand. But just to practice architecture, if someone wants to establish their architecture practice, why do they need masters?
They need, of course, they need
But
specialization
doing
and
that means the
refinement.
architecture education is not enough then. If
How can you climb step number 10 when you have not climbed 1, 2, 3, 4 to 10 steps?
what are those steps?
Your basic education, architectural education, basic
Okay.
BRs.
Okay.
And after that, you do specialize, you do urban design, landscape. So at 26, 30 odd diverse fields that you can go into. Even if I would want to practice, I would say that you see refinement that happens, refinement of thought that happens,
Hmm.
refinement of judgment that happens, maturity that happens after your graduation. See, you graduate at 22, 23 years of age
Hmm.
and you want to start practice, then you want to start working in an office. Unless you are specifically very oriented of not continuing your education,
Hmm.
either you dislike education, you don't want to study 2 more years,
Hmm.
or you have financial issues where you need to take care of your family yourself, or you cannot continue, then only you look for placements. Otherwise, you should do specialization.
But again, another counter argument here would be all the people who want to do masters are suggested that you should at least practice in the field for 2 to 3 years to
No,
understand you want to
balcony.
Okay.
Why? First of all, understand why they do it.
Okay.
Second, not practice, have experience of 2 years.
That connects to the placement thing, right?
Not
Okay.
necessary. See, the idea is we in academia, administrators of academics felt
Hmm.
that the quality of education that is happening at the undergrad level is wanting, number one. Number
Okay.
two, the student who graduates at 22 to 23 years of age
Hmm.
is not mature enough to understand the nuances of a postgraduate. So that's why you learn your theories and your academic exercises. Now you
Hmm.
learn what happens in the field and then decide what field would you want to do. आप बताओ जब when you graduated as an architect,
Hmm.
did you know what is conservation? वो better है मेरे लिए, मेरा उसमें interest है कि मैं urban design करूँ, मैं landscape. Very few people know क्या करना है बच्चों के at that level.
मतलब हर कॉलेज में ये वाले कोर्सेज होते हैं, राइट? There is a semester where you do urban design. There is a semester where you learn about landscape, about sustainability, eco-friendly architecture. We are exposed to literally everything in the 5 years course so that we can make up our mind.
Usually doesn't happen. Theoretically, yes, but practically it doesn't happen. Anyway, that's a different debate. What I'm trying to tell you. Not every institution says that. I mean, it's not a regulation where you need to have a 2 years of practice or
Yeah.
experience to get admission. It's preferable. It's not mandatory to have a 2 years. But some people go directly, some work for 2, 3 years.
The architecture fraternity is not involved with the council. I'm talking Council of Architecture, policy and decision making as such. If we were to encourage that involvement, what is the best shot for anyone outside the council to become its member?
Unfortunately, the Act does not allow that to happen.
Okay.
I'll explain you very briefly the structure of the council.
Mm.
You need to become a member either by election or by nomination. Members of the council are all these states and the
Mm.
union territories appoint or nominate an architect.
Mm.
The Act says nominate an architect
Yeah.
to the council
Mm.
within the state. Most of the state governments usually appoint their chief architect or send their architect from the government sector to the council.
Mm-hmm.
There are two constituencies apart from this. One is the head of the architectural institutions. There's an election that happens
Okay.
amongst all the heads, and they elect 5 amongst the heads of the institution. So that's the representation from the academy. The second constituency, Indian Institute of Architects, which is
Yeah.
the IIA,
Mm.
and they elect within those 4 or 5 zones, and then they elect amongst themselves, and they send the representation to the council.
Hmm.
And then there were certain other nominations from the defense and CPWD and Ministry of Education and so on. This constitutes about 53 or 58 council members. And they elected amongst these nominated and elected members.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the state governments are free to select a practicing architect, the state, and send them. But usually, how will to have a political pool, you need to know someone to get nominated, or the easiest way out for a state government is to nominate their own employees from the architecture department, either from PWD or architecture department, and send them the chief architect. So, you chief architects of every state, the architects of the state government employees are nominated council. So that intent defeated. Number one. Number two is, unfortunately, the IIA has risen to the level that it should have risen and involved it. For whatever reasons, we don't want to go into that. There are 25,000 odd architect members. So the relation from the constituency of the IIA was meant that the profession is represented. We have 160,000 odd registered architects at the moment. Of that, maybe 110,000 active membership. Talking about 1.5 to 2 years ago, a local figure. 1,10,000 अगर architects हैं आपके पास में, और आपके IIA, which is the main premier professional body organization, has only 1/4 of that. So still they are sending 5 members to the council. So they are not actually representing the profession.
Yeah.
So these are two issues which are plaguing the structure of the council, which I think need rectification and needs,
What would you?
Yeah.
What would be the structure as per your opinion?
It should be direct election, which is a very humongous task to do because there is no defined constituency. But the president should also be elected directly by the architects, registered architects, and few council members should also be elected directly by the profession. That is the best way out. The logistics is the problem. It's a long drawn process because the act has to be. It has to be done through the parliament for that to happen. And so who would want to change this? Who would want to bell the cat, and have an election done across the country where architects are directly president and for the members? As a result, the majority of the architects and the profession are not represented in the council.
What about these initiatives that councils take quite some time back? I think there are some initiatives that keep on happening with the council, right?
Of course, I mean, during my term, we have taken.
That recently happened.
Pardon?
the PIJETA, the postgraduate entrance test that has been.
I have certain reservations on that. I'll not.
I mean, I'm just talking about these initiatives that keep on happening. So can someone be a part of it? And how? If yes, then how?
A lot of initiatives. During my term, we took the maximum number of initiatives that any team ever did. Like the COA Social was there, the Committee for Women. There's so many. There were 36 committees working in various. Depends on how involved you want to become. We ask for you. There's a login portal. If you are an architect and you have a registered number, then you have a registered email ID and a login. Log into your portal. There are avenues where you can give your name, submit your CV, and then we look through that, and then that becomes our resource bank. होता है, but then president usually decides policies along with the EC, the executive committee. So if you're known to the president or they recommend names, it's a democratic process amongst the council members, wherein you appoint people. Say, for example, if I have to make a committee which will work on the empowerment of women in architecture. So I will know some people who are already working on that, people who are aware of the issues, and then my executive committee, my vice president would also know some more. And so we sit together, discuss, and then we appoint a committee which works on that. And then we also look through the resources that people have filed. For example, you log into your portal and say you are very in culturals, let's say. So if there's something which is happening at cultural end, then we will involve you in the process. But the problem is architects by themselves don't do that. Log into the portal and say you.
Okay, all right. Another thing I'm very curious about is COA provides the license to architects. In what cases can they revoke the license?
Professional misconduct. There's a defined guideline for that, professional misconduct. There are guidelines. Pardon?
It has to be raised complaint against?
Yes. There's a certain process to follow. There's a committee called disciplinary committee, which is statutory committee made by the Act of the Parliament. So that committee is constituted. Before it goes to the committee, there's a prima facie investigation that happens on a complaint. The complaint has to come first. We receive complaints against architects, engineers against architects, clients, municipal corporations, and so many people. So we get lots of complaints, and a lot of time is spent in discussing this and working on it. So first of all, an opinion is in whether a prima facie case exists or not. When there's a prima facie case against a particular complaint, then that is sent to the disciplinary committee. The DC has their own procedures on which they follow. The architects of the parties are called. It's just a quasi-court hearing kind of. So, conduct regulations will invite a license. It's given 1989 ka professional conduct. And then we made a manual of architectural practice. So we are working towards it. I don't know what the current team is doing, but we work to make it into a regulation, part of it into it. So it would have been a more elaborate document.
Yeah. I think right now the professional code is a little bit vague. It says that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I mean, it says it should provide a nurturing working environment.
Let's understand. The act was made in 72. Conduct was made in 89. And since 89, and also the profession has changed so much. Drastically, changes have happened in the profession. While it has not been updated yet. And no one would want to update, fortunately or unfortunately. Very few practicing architects have been the presidents of the council. Most of them have come from not really involved or wanted to change the regulations. So they are the chartered accountants profession brutally watertight and very strict. You cannot switch a chartered accountant unless the previous chartered accountant gives an NOC. So if my client wants to go to you have to take an NOC from me. Otherwise, your license gets cancelled because you have not taken an NOC. I'll give when my dues are clear. There's absolute moral degradation in the way we practice architecture, the way we look at practice, moral that has happened in our profession of late. Where we do not think twice in snatching someone else's project, not worrying whether the fees have been paid, whether the earlier architect has been given their deeds, so many other aspects, and which is not morally upright.
Yeah. And how much do you think it has to do with the professional code of conduct?
Of course,
How
there is
much
a
of
professional. See, we had a IPC, Indian Penal Code. Now we have Bharat Sanhita or something.
Hmm.
But चोरी होती है, मर्डर होता है, बाकी सब क्राइम कमिट होता है ना,
Hmm.
लॉज होने के बावजूद भी. तो लॉज आर प्रिवेंटिव, प्रोफेशनल कोड इज प्रिवेंटिव.
Hmm.
किसी का मॉरल डिग्रेडेशन कोई कोड या कोई लॉ या कोई एक्ट रोक नहीं सकता. तो आप एक मर्डर करो चाहे दो करो, सजा तो आपको एक ही मिलनी है
Hmm.
ना. Intensity of that punishment, but the to be blunt and honest, the professional code is absolutely weak, and the morals of practice, the
Hmm.
ethics of practice amongst our profession. I'm sorry to say, but I have nothing to lose to that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, anyway, it's not a secret anymore. Everyone knows that.
Nobody have to say. You should have the nerve to say it publicly, and that we morally degraded as architects.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
conduct to professional का जो code है आपका वो तो weak है. It needs to be, and it
Hmm.
needs to change with the times.
Yeah.
It needs to change with the time. आज आप इंस्टाग्राम पे, फेसबुक पे आप अपनी पब्लिसिटी नहीं कर सकते अगर उसके अगेंस्ट केस चलाओ. कैसे मतलब it times have changed, the way we communicate has changed, the way we the name board has to be 4 inches high, 4 inches, the letters have to be 4 inches or 3 inches, it has to
Hmm.
be black and white. ये सब जमाना चेंज हो गया है. जो 70 का था जमाना अभी नहीं चेंज हो गया.
So, like, what would be the three main changes that you would do?
I would remove the code.
You should remove the code.
Code has to come from within. See, code, any code regulation, moral policing should be done. Minimum moral policing. आप morals को पुलिस नहीं कर. अगर किसी ने कुछ क्राइम कमिट किया है, कुछ गलत काम किया है, तो आप वो डिफाइन कर सकते हो कि काम क्या गलत है आपका और उसकी क्या सजा होनी चाहिए. आप इतना ही कर
Rather,
सकते
like,
है ना, उतना ही कर सकते हो, ज्यादा नहीं कर सकते. तो अच्छा होता क्या है कि अपने यहाँ पे कि आज आपका लाइसेंस कैंसिल हो गया तो क्या कोई बात नहीं यार, देयर आर 10 आर्किटेक्ट्स हु विल साइन ऑन माय बिहाफ, मैं उनको पेमेंट कर दूंगा. मत मैं अपने आप वो आर्किटेक्ट नहीं कॉल करता. I mean, there's so many degradations that have happened. So the way out, the change that I was wanting was to have a professional qualifying examination or professional examination, which will test you after certain amounts of experience, like it happens across the world except two countries, that is India and Pakistan, and give you a license to practice. When I give a license to practice, an architect, you can be an employed architect, you can be teaching architect, you can be an academia or wherever you would want to, but practice as an architect, to sign as an architect, you need to have this license.
Yeah.
That will curtail most of the issues. So that is one sweeping change that I was working on, and the ministry had also agreed to it. Everything was in place, but I don't know what is the current status. I'm not in touch to what is happening on that front. That is number one. And number two is that I don't know if you can make it into a code, but the senior professionals have to be more sympathetic to the younger generation, the newer generation that is coming in. The senior generation has to look from the eyes and the aspirations of the next gen, which is coming in to them. And I don't know that could be done through a code.
I was actually wondering, why isn't it mandatory for graduates working within architecture firms to register with COA?
Achha, why is it not mandatory?
Huh.
Or how can you make it mandatory? भाई आप आर्किटेक्ट बन के ग्रेजुएट हो गए, अब आपको आर्किटेक्ट कॉल करना है अपने आप को. अगर आपकी इच्छा है तो आप रजिस्टर कर लीजिए. अपने आप को आर्किटेक्ट बोलना है, अगर आपको तो नहीं बोलना है तो मत करिए. हाउ कैन यू फोर्स पीपल टू रजिस्टर?
So
आप
basically,
ऐसे क्यों बोल रहे हैं? आप एक गिलास से ही पानी पीना है, आपको दूसरे गिलास से पानी नहीं, ऐसा कैसे कर सकते? कंट्री फ्री कंट्री.
right. But जब हम बोलते हैं कि 1.65 lakh architects हैं इंडिया में, but बहुत सारे लोग unregistered भी हैं and they have BR degree.
Yeah.
And तो
But since they are not
numbers तो
since they are not registered with the council, we cannot call them architects.
oh, अच्छा, Bachelor of Architecture does not give the title of architect. COA,
Yes.
that
Registration
we
gives the title.
will give you a
Yes.
title of architect.
Yes.
हम्म।
Yes.
तो ये जो हम लोग हर जगह पे AR डॉट लगा लेते हैं,
गलत लगाते हो
तो
आप, प्रोसिक्यूट किया जा सकते हैं।
no, I am
The law. No, no,
I am
giving
registered.
you an example.
मैं वैसे पूछ रही हूँ।
You know, I'm just telling you वो गलत है, मतलब you cannot call yourself an architect if you're not registered.
हाँ।
So it's
अच्छा
not
ठीक है,
matter.
Anand, we see a lot of young platforms these days coming into the industry, मतलब जैसे startups है बहुत सारे। अभी मैंने देखा आर्किटेक्चर ट्रैक्ट 361 डेलोपस है, जेका है, मतलब बहुत सारे आ रहे हैं स्टार्टअप्स। तो इज देयर एनी फंडिंग सपोर्ट फ्रॉम द काउंसिल जो
No.
मतलब इस में ऐसा कुछ ही नहीं होता है?
Council का mandate ही नहीं, no. There's no mandate. Doesn't fall under the
हम्म,
mandate of the council. मतलब council का मतलब उसके scope में नहीं है, उसके है, उसकी है, मतलब इसका ना वो it's not the role of the council. Council's role is to regulate architectural education and architectural profession. And one thing is very clear: any act that is made by the parliament, is for the common people.
कॉमन।
हम ये समझते हैं कि आर्किटेक्ट एक्ट हमारे लिए बना है, हमारे लिए नहीं बना आर्किटेक्ट एक्ट। आर्किटेक्ट एक्ट बना है कॉमन पीपल के लिए, बताने के लिए कि अगर आपको आर्किटेक्चर सर्विसेज चाहिए तो आपको ये आर्किटेक्चर सर्विसेज चाहिए, ये पैरामीटर्स हैं और ये रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस हैं। तो इट इज टू प्रोटेक्ट द कॉमन मैन, नॉट द आर्किटेक्ट। हम ये अज्यूम करते हैं, दैट्स व्हाई यू आर आस्किंग दिस क्वेश्चन कि भाई आर्किटेक्ट्स को स्टार्टअप्स को फंड क्यों नहीं करते। काउंसिल का रोल ही नहीं है फंड करना, मैंडेट ही नहीं है उसका, बिकॉज़ वो आर्किटेक्ट्स के लिए बना है। इट इज मेड फॉर द कॉमन पीपल। एवरी act of this country is made for the common.
Okay, so I have a few questions on professional code of conduct. I know we touched upon it a little bit, but just coming back to it, the council was constituted to keep architects and the professions in check. जो भी हमने बात करी, right? Most of the projects were government projects, large scale projects में कर रहे थे काम, and that's why we called the noble profession. And जिसके साथ में a lot of professional conduct, like एक guidelines भी आई कि मार्केट नहीं करना है, एडवर्टाइज नहीं करना है ना, मतलब कर सकते हैं बट नॉट ऑस्टेंटेशियसली नहीं कर सकते इसको, राइट? सो इंटरनेट तब नहीं था, राइट? सो टुडे वी सी अ लॉट ऑफ आर्किटेक्ट इन्फ्लुएंसर्स, जिसके बारे में अभी हमने बात करी थी, हु आर प्रमोटिंग मटेरियल्स। सो विद सो मच रिटेल हैपनिंग, is it still relevant for architects to still remain that profession? And by nobility, I generally mean
No.
नहीं, code of
You're
conduct.
mixing two things.
Okay.
You're mixing two things.
Okay.
Couple of things. One is, see, whether a profession is noble or not noble. It's independent of what you're asking for.
See, by nobility, I only want to say कि वो जो advertising नहीं करना है, वो जो
So that has
marketing
nothing to
नहीं
do with nobility. The
Public
profession
health-
is not.
वो
No, because why is medical profession also a noble profession?
तो
It is
public
a
health
noble profession because you save lives,
Yeah.
cure people.
Hmm.
So similarly, architecture profession is also noble because you are directly or indirectly responsible for the quality of life of the users and your fellow citizens. It's an intangible contribution which an architect makes because आप उसकी बिल्डिंग्स में रहते हो, उसके ऑफिस में काम करते हो, उसके स्कूल्स में जाते हो, कॉलेज में जाते हो, पब्लिक स्पेसेस यूज करते हो, डिजाइन बाय आर्किटेक्ट्स. So you are influencing the quality of life of fellow citizens and the users. So इसलिए वो noble profession है. तो independent चीजें हैं दोनों, है ना? सकते मतलब, है ना? जैसे कि आपको ऑयल को पानी में नहीं मिला सकते, पानी को ऑयल में नहीं मिला सकते, ऐसा वाटर टाइट कंपार्टमेंट है ये, इसको आप मिला नहीं सकते, पहली बात. दूसरी बात, व्हाट यू आर सेइंग इज एब्सोल्युटली राइट. प्रोफेशन शुड नीड्स टू चेंज. हम क्यों नहीं एडवर्टाइज करना चाहिए हमने? जब एडवर्टाइजिंग का दिखावे का जमाना है पूरा, एवरीथिंग इज दिखावा आज की तारीख में. जब तक आप को कुछ मिलेगा नहीं. Everything is show, everything is publicity, everything is your presence on the media, and that's how you get projects. That's how you work on projects, and that's how. I'm not saying that's the only source of projects, but it's a substantial part of social media, which matters these days for the younger
It's
generation.
not about only social media also, right? मतलब advertisements भी क्यों नहीं कर सकते? मतलब physical advertisements, flyers हैं. I am not saying कि hoardings लगा दो.
क्यों नहीं लगाओ? मतलब जब फ्लायर बेच सकते हो तो होर्डिंग नहीं लगा सकते? आपको अल्कोहल का, लिकर का एडवर्टाइजमेंट नहीं कर सकते? Morally, it's not allowed. Legally, it's not allowed in our country. But क्या है? जो भी लिकर के ब्रांड है, बड़े-बड़े ब्रांड है, पानी बेच रहे हैं लिकर की बोतल में सेम ब्रांड के नाम पे.
राइट. आर्किटेक्ट्स
We
को
are
भी
बेच रहे हैं. No, see, there's a difference. The difference is these days, as the generations are coming newer and newer, there's a thin line, a razor's edge, which divides a business and a profession. Okay?
Hmm.
And that line is getting eroded constantly, so much so that we have now forgotten the difference between a business and a
Hmm.
profession. And that is why you ask a question. And that is why this sentiment or this issue is, talked about in the present generation or generations before that.
Hmm.
Profession क्या
Where
है?
would in profession and between business, where would you draw this line between profession and business?
It is moral and ethics. For example, मैं आपको example देता हूँ. Doctors का भी आसानी से समझते हैं आप लोग.
Hmm.
आज तक आपने कैसे देखा? आपको डॉक्टर के पास जाओ, कोई मेडिकल हॉस्पिटल में चले जाओ, कोई
Hmm.
एक चेन में चले जाओ, आपको 10 टेस्ट लिखवा देंगे, जरूरत हो चाहे ना हो.
Yeah, right.
आप सर दर्द लेके जाओ, वो बोलेगा ब्लड टेस्ट भी करा लो, अपना किडनी टेस्ट भी करा लो, एलएफटी भी करा लो, लिवर टेस्ट भी करा लो, सब करा लो. क्यों करा लो? और कहाँ से कराओ? उन्हीं के हॉस्पिटल से कराओ. बाहर से नहीं करा, बाहर की रिपोर्ट
Reports
लेके आओगे,
में
एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेगा वो.
correct
हाँ?
reports में accept नहीं होती है.
नहीं होगी एक्सेप्ट. क्यों नहीं होगी? ये दिस इज वेयर
This
प्रोफेशन हैज लॉस्ट इट्स मीनिंग एंड एग्जिस्ट एंड बिजनेस इज टेकिंग ओवर. हमारे यहाँ भी ऐसी है. मेरे को अगर M25 कॉन्क्रीट में काम चलता है तो मैं M30 क्यों M40 क्यों करूँ रिकमेंड? क्योंकि मेरे को वहाँ पैसे ज्यादा मिलेंगे कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स, या मुझे ज्यादा कमीशन, या मेरा बेनिफिट होगा, या किसी और का बेनिफिट होगा प्रोसेस में. है ना? मैं एक आपको बहुत ही मंडेन एग्जांपल दे रहा हूँ कि सब लोग ऐसा करते हैं, ऐसा नहीं कह रहा हूँ मैं, बट आई एम गिविंग यू एग्जांपल ऑफ द डिफरेंस बिटवीन अ बिजनेस एंड अ प्रोफेशन. आप डॉक्टर के पास जाओ, वो कहता है अरे कान में दर्द है आपका, हो सकता है ये थ्रोट से कनेक्टेड है, तो आप ईटी वाले के पास भी चले जाओ, है ना, थ्रोट वाले को भी दिखा दो. फिर वो थ्रोट वाला बोलेगा अरे आपका तो इन्फेक्शन है, मतलब ईसोफेगस में इंटेस्टाइन में आपको इन्फेक्शन है, आप वो भी टेस्ट करा लो, एंडोस्कोपी भी करा लो. ये बिजनेस बन गया, ये प्रोफेशन बन गया, क्योंकि हमारे मॉरल एथिक्स, हमारा जो कोर एक्सिस्टेंस एज अ प्रोफेशनल, वो इरोड होते जा रहा है बिकॉज ऑफ कंपल्जन, बिकॉज ऑफ फाइनेंशियल कंपल्जन, बिकॉज ऑफ टर्नओवर कंपल्जन, बिकॉज ऑफ our desire to acquire more and more wealth, fame, and luxuries in life. तो ये प्रोफेशन और बिजनेस में जो डिफरेंस है वो खत्म होते जा रहा है. तो दैट लाइन हैज टू बी ड्रॉन समवेयर वेयर आई एम नॉट सेइंग दैट यू डोंट अर्न मनी. You earn money as much as you think you need, but that justification and that just earning has to be defined by the profession, and that is where that line is drawn. When you say कि ठीक है, there are certain ethics which I will not compromise on. There are certain issues which I will not compromise. There will be no moral degradation at my end. I want to live a comfortable life. I want to secure my future or my family's future. But जो greed है, वो greed नहीं चाहिए, और कहाँ खत्म होनी चाहिए और उसको कहाँ पे रोक लगानी चाहिए is what defines where a profession exists and where a business exists. I'll give you an example. I was into an investigation committee from
okay.
I was investigating a corruption case. Let's say, let's put it that way. There were contractor who had quoted 2 times the rate. This is standard rate.
Okay.
He said कि सर आप मुझे क्यों प्रोसिक्यूट कर रहे हो? मैं तो अपना माल बेचने बैठा हूँ. मुझे 10,000 रुपए चाहिए थे, मैंने 10,000 कोट किए, मुझे 10,000 दे दिए. चीज थी 5,000 की, मैं 20 भी मांग सकता था उसके लिए. The rate was 5,000 and he had quoted 10,000 or something. And it was approved and he was paid by that. So he said कि आप मुझे क्यों पकड़ रहे हो? मैं तो मार्केट में बेचा अपना माल बेचने के लिए. मैं तो कॉन्क्रीट बेच रहा हूँ अपना मार्केट में. मैं 10,000 में बेच रहा हूँ. जिसने इसको खरीदा उसको पकड़ो जाके, मुझे क्यों पकड़ रहे हो? Which is a point, point. We are not sitting in the market selling our services, providing services. We are not selling our services. तो ये जो लाइन है प्रोफेशन की इन बिजनेस से, ये समझना हमको बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट. और वो लाइन को रिस्टोर करना चाहिए या मेंटेन करना चाहिए. रिस्टोर में इसलिए बोल रहा हूँ, वो लाइन अभी इरेज होती जा रही है, और मेंटेन करना चाहिए. तो आपका प्रोफेशन रहेगा. वेदर इट इज नोबल और नॉट नोबल इज नॉट इम्पोर्टेंट.
Yeah. So is that justified then?
सी गो द एक्सट्रीम एंड, जैसा वोटिंग लगवा लो यार, मैं सबसे बड़ा टैटू मैंने ये प्रोजेक्ट किया है, मेरे पास आओ, मतलब है ना, मैसेज खरीदो, ये लगा लो, थोड़ा ज्यादा हो जाएगा. मतलब फ्लायर बांटना भी ज्यादा हो जाएगा. बांटे जा रहे हैं, ये लो फ्लायर लो, ये लो, मेरे को चंदा दो, मेरे को डोनेशन दो, ऐसा ये टाइप का भी थोड़ा ज्यादा हो जाएगा. कोड्स एंड द रेगुलेशंस एंड द रूल्स हैव टू चेंज विद टाइम्स. And that is, when you make a policy, what is the biggest challenge with the policy maker? The biggest challenge with the policy maker is to foresee कि 10 साल बाद में, 20 साल के बाद में ये policy, whether it will withstand or not, and what is the aspiration of the society now, and what is the aspiration of the society 10 years from now. एंड उसका एक बैलेंस बनाते हुए आप एक पॉलिसी बना, ऐसी पॉलिसी बनानी चाहिए जो कि आज के प्रोफेशन, आज के टाइम केटर करेगी, 10 साल के बाद भी केटर करेगी, एंड उसके बाद में जो प्रोफेशन की सैनिटी है, सैंक्टिटी है, उसको भी मेंटेन रखेगी, है ना, सो दैट सैनिटी ऑफ द प्रोफेशनल इज मेंटेन्ड एंड इट डज नॉट बिकम अ बिजनेस. अब कुछ लोग इसमें आर्ग्यू करते हैं बहुत, बिजनेस क्यों नहीं बन सकता, हम क्या खाली यहाँ मतलब चैरिटी करने के लिए बैठेंगे? मैं नहीं कह रहा हूँ चैरिटी करने के लिए बैठो. आई lead a touchwood a very luxurious life with a secured future, है ना, but I do not compromise on my ethics and morals. I do not make it into my profession into a business. It's not a business. It runs on absolute ethical and moral code of conduct, which I have established for my own self. So it depends on each individual how morally degraded and morally corrupt you are to maintain the sanctity of what is a profession and what is a business.
Well, I had only those many questions to ask to you. If you have anything to add, any message that you would want to give to the younger generation.
Patience रखो. मैराथन वाला जो मैसेज है, मैराथन रेस इज नॉट अ 100-meter dash. पेशेंस रखो, कमिटमेंट रखो, स्किल. सी, छोटी सी बात मैं फिर रिपीट कर रहा हूँ, एंड मे बी यू हैव मोर ऑडियंस देन अर्लियर वंस. आप एक पेन खरीदने जाते हो, 10 रुपए का पेन होता है, उस पर स्क्रैच होता है, आप खरीदते नहीं हो. कार खरीदने जाते हो, 30-40 लाख की कार, 10 लाख की कार होती है, उस पर भी अगर छोटा सा भी मामूली सा डेंट दोगे ना, यू विल से यार मैं क्यों लूं डैमेज प्रोडक्ट, मैं अच्छा प्रोडक्ट, मेरे को फ्रेश प्रोडक्ट चाहिए. आप कितनी बार वॉश खरीदने गए हो, लिपस्टिक खरीदने गए हो मार्केट में, आपने बोला फ्रेश पीस दो यार, फ्रेश पीस निकाल के. व्हाई? बिकॉज दैट इज व्हाट you desire to the best. So when you're providing a consultancy services where you're getting fees in lakhs of crores or in thousands, why should the client accept dereliction of service from you? Why should he accept, and why should he come to you, specifically you?
Yeah.
क्यों आएगा मेरे पास में? क्यों मुझे कुछ ऐसी चीज मालूम है, क्यों नहीं मालूम? कुछ मैं ऐसी चीज डिलीवर कर सकता, क्लाइंट नहीं कर सकता. कुछ ऐसी चीज, ऐसी नॉलेज है मेरे पास में, मेरी ऐसी स्किल है मेरे पास में जो क्लाइंट के पास में नहीं है, जो मैं कर सकता. And I can give that vision and convert that vision into reality for the client. इसलिए आपके पास आता है वो, है ना. तो जब आपके पास आएगा तो आपको ये सब डेवलप करना है अपने में, और डेवलप ओवरनाइट नहीं होती. कॉलेज से निकले और बोले मुझे यार 50,000 रुपये चाहिए, क्यों मिलेंगे आपको 50,000? क्यों देंगे 50,000 रुपये लोग आपको, जब आपका मेटल एस्टेब्लिश नहीं है ना. दैट इज इम्पोर्टेंट. इट्स अ टू वे ट्रैफिक. तो आपको पेशेंस रखना है, थोड़ा पेशेंस रखो. आज आप कंपेयर करते हो आईटी प्रोफेशन से, सीएस वालों के साथ में, आईटी वालों के साथ में, एआई वालों के साथ में, उनको 40,000 का पैकेज, मुझे तो यार 15,000 का पैकेज. 10 साल के बाद में आप वैसे 10 प्रोफेशनल्स को हायर कर सकते हो, बिकम अ प्रैक्टिसिंग आर्किटेक्ट. तो ये प्रोफेशन. और सी, वी आर हियर टू बिकम एंटरप्रेन्योर्स. वी आर हियर टू प्रोवाइड एम्प्लॉयमेंट. वी हैव टू क्रिएट एम्प्लॉयर्स, नॉट एम्प्लॉयज. And that's what an architectural training is all about. We have to be employers, not employees. ये हम समझते नहीं. We have to be entrepreneurs. We have to provide employment. If you want to be an architect, we have to ultimately turn towards being employers and being entrepreneurs and doing something, and not necessarily core architectural practice out there. आज आप UI UX फील्ड में देखो कितने आर्किटेक्ट्स काम कर रहे हैं.
हाँ, अभी तो मतलब आर्किटेक्ट right?
Diverse field. More avenues have opened for architects to be entrepreneurs, open startups and so on. तो थोड़ा पॉजिटिव, बड़ा सोचना चाहिए, शॉर्ट टर्म नहीं सोचना चाहिए. कोई बड़ा सोचोगे, बड़े ख्वाब देखोगे तो उसमें से कुछ तो वसूल होगा, छोटे ख्वाब देखोगे तो क्या वसूल होगा आपको? बड़े ख्वाब देखो यार, ख्वाब देखो, क्या प्रॉब्लम? बड़े ख्वाब देखो.
सही बात. चलिए, thank you so much for giving us the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you found Converse valuable, you can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. You can find all past episodes and know more about us on Insight.ai. See you in the next episode.